Some losses shake you quiet. Others light a fire that never goes out. This is the story of Specialist Joseph A. Graves, or Joey, told not through medals or citations, but through his dad, Kevin. Kevin didn't grow up planning to raise a son alone, but when life handed him that role, he ran with it. He built something steady. Friday night games, golf trips, bad dad jokes, the kind of bond that gets you through anything. Joey grew up watching that example, and when the towers fell, he decided to give back in the biggest way he knew how. He joined the Army's military police. Korea first, then Iraq. On July 25, 2006, a roadside attack outside Sadr City took his life. He was 21. But Kevin's story didn't end there. He turned the grief that could have ended him into something that carries Joey's name forward, a foundation and a yearly golf tournament that brings people together instead of tearing them apart. This isn't a story about how someone died. It's about how love keeps finding ways to live on. If this mission matters to you, helping Gold Star families share who their loved ones were, not just how they died, please consider supporting our work. Through our partnership with Veterans Collaborative, your donation is tax deductible and keeps these stories alive. Learn more at goldstarsstoriesusa.com. This is Joey's story and a father's promise to never let it fade.
Marine Captain Brian Latendry died earlier this month in an explosion in Iraq. He was 27, a husband and father, and he was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, a few miles from where he grew up. As America observes Memorial Day,
I have been directed by the President of the United States and the Commandant of the Marine Corps to inform you that today at 0530, your son was killed in action while in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Not very many of us can accomplish our goals or our dreams, and he always knew where he wanted to go, and he did it.
A Gold Star family is one who has lost a loved one serving in the United States military. It's a distinction no family ever seeks, a bond shared through sacrifice, remembrance, and profound loss. I'm Nick Latendry, and I've been a Gold Star sibling for over 18 years. In those 18 years, I've learned that while ceremonies fade, medals are stored away, and life continues, the story doesn't end for the families left behind. This podcast is dedicated to remembering those who gave everything for their country and to telling the lesser-known stories, the quiet, powerful journeys of grief, strength, resilience, and hope that follows after the flags are folded and the crowds disperse. These are Gold Star stories.
My name is Kevin Graves. I am the proud father of Specialist Joseph A. Graves. Joey was my only child. Raised him as a single parent from when he was 9 years old until he went into the Army. He was everything to me, and I am proud of the opportunity to be able to say his name one more time, so I thank you for that opportunity, and I'd love to share a little bit about my son with you.
Absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit about him before he joined the service?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of history. His mother and I divorced when he was 3. He lived with her until he was 8.5, almost 9. And I had some challenges in life. We all take up different paths, and mine happened to involve a lot of partying. And so at the age of 38 years old, when Joy was 9 years old, I got sober. I've been sober now for 31 years. So a few months later, his mother calls me up and says, "Hey, your son needs to come live with you now," which was pretty remarkable based on the fact that a year prior to that, I couldn't take care of a gerbil. And now here I am being asked to be a full-time dad to my son, which is what I was preparing myself for. Had a nice 3-bedroom house, had his bedroom was all set up because I had him on weekends, and we were good to go. So in the 5th grade, he came and lived with me. From then on, we did everything together. We went to Europe together. We traveled the United States together. When he wanted to play basketball, I coached the team. He was kind of an individual sport guy. I'm a golfer, so he and I played a lot of golf together. We traveled to Arizona. We traveled down the Monterey Peninsula playing golf. He enjoyed the game. We had friends family friends that enjoyed the game. And like I said, we went to Europe together at one point, and also traveled around the United States. But my whole life rotated around Joey. I stayed out of all relationships. I'd been down that road once or twice and figured I wasn't very good at it. So I had never intended to remarry. And focused all my time on Joey. And we're a family of faith, so I was an elder at my church, and I led the youth group there. Snow ski trips. He loved to ski. He loved to snowboard and game. Gaming was just coming in. This was back. So he graduated from high school in 2003. So, his cell phone was like a Nokia flip phone, right? I mean, this is prior to all the stuff that we live in today. The technology is unbelievable. But when I got a new cable box, he was always the one that would set it up for me because he knew more about that stuff than I did. And we just did everything together. He was my best friend. The interesting part about recovering from alcoholism is that you tend to have to grow because you tend to put your life on hold through chemical stuff and, the usual. I don't want to get too much into it because it's not a big part of my life, but I was teaching him to be a young man. He was teaching me to be a father. So we learned together. We grew together. And like I said, we did everything together. I stayed out of relationships because I wanted to spend the time with him. And again, I didn't think I was very good at it. I hadn't been completely successful. So my life continued to be a success personally as I grew through, my different jobs. I've been in construction most of my life, and construction was booming in those days, and life was good. We had a lot to do, and then in his senior year of high school, he was big into performing arts, not being on stage, but he was the guy behind the scenes. He ran the lights, he did the sets, he did that. He loved working at the PAC, the Performing Arts Center, a great performing arts center at the high school he went to. I was going through some papers as we were cleaning out the house for a remodel I shared with you, and I came across a bunch of his old report cards. And out of 7 classes, 4 of them, the teachers had always clicked the box. It was a pleasure having him in class. I mean, that's just the kind of kid he was. And that was them talking. I mean, I'm bragging too, but that was them telling me how much they enjoyed my son. And that was pretty obvious from the response that occurred, once we got that knock on the door. But anyway, so he came home from school one day. He was 17 years old. His birthday was in December. So this was in August or probably September of 2002, maybe. He was 17 years old. He was in his senior year. And I'm starting to make him dinner. And he comes in one day and he goes, "Hey, Dad, I want to go in the Army." Well, that was a little surprising because we're at war. We had just gone to war in Iraq in 2003, and this is 2002. We had in the Kuwait War and the Desert Storm, and we were at war in the Middle East. And I explained that to him. He goes, "Yeah, I know, but our country was attacked." He was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 hit, which is the impetus, as you know, for so many of our kids, the younger kids that joined. And he said, "Our country was attacked. I feel a need to protect our country." Well, what do you do except say you're proud, right? I mean, we come from a very patriotic family, relatively conservative family, very patriotic, but no military service. Yes, uncles, grandfathers. I have a grandfather that on his headstone, he's both served in World War I and World War II over at San Bruno at Golden Gate National Cemetery. But I was graduated from high school in 1975. Everybody's coming back from Vietnam. The draft has just ended. Nobody's going into the military. In retrospect, kind of wish I had. But that story's yet to come. And then, so I said to him, I said, "It sounds like you've been talking to a recruiter." And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I would like to talk to that recruiter." And he goes, "No problem." So he calls up Staff Sergeant Bryant, David Bryant. And the Dress Blues had just come out. And the first people that got him were the recruiters because, hey, we want to put the good look on for the Army. And I love the Army. I'm not ridiculing it at all. I love my son's choices. I'm proud of his choices. I'm proud he served. Not proud of the outcome, or not happy with the outcome, but I'm proud of everything and all of our decisions that we made together. Anyway, so David Bryant shows up. I grill this guy at the table I'm sitting at right now. I grill this guy for 3 hours. And he tells me all the things, my son wants to be an FBI agent. That's his ultimate goal. So if he goes into the MPs, he's already a G, he's already working for the government, and they're looking for people with that kind of training, and they know his training, and and he wanted to be a field agent. 80% of our FBI agents are white-collar guys in big buildings that do analysis and stuff. He wanted to wear a sidearm. He wanted to be a field agent for the FBI. We have friends that are FBI agents. He talked to them about it, and they explained to him the challenges of that. They own you. You, for the first 5 to 10 years, you do whatever they tell you to, and you might be in Boise, Idaho. You go where they tell you. But it's what he wanted to do. So that was his impetus for joining the MPs. Sergeant Bryant told me all the things that the Army was going to do for my son. And as is typical, at the end of that 3 hours of grilling, I mean, literally grilling, he handed me, since Joy was 17, he could not enter the military without my permission. I had to actually put him in the military. He handed me a document, and the document said, now remember, I came from the Vietnam era where there might be a little distrust with our government and our military. I personally am very patriotic. I don't have that same kind of distrust, but it's in the back of your mind. And I get this document, and it says, we made you no promises, we made you no guarantees. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. Sergeant Bryant, you just spent 3 hours telling me what you're going to do for my son, and now you're asking me to sign a document that said you didn't say anything. He goes, well, but when he gets to MEPS, this will happen. I don't know what MEPS is. I don't know anything about the military. But I looked at my son, and I said, Joey, is this really what you want to do? And he says, Dad, I really want to do this. And so that night, I signed the papers that put my son in the Army, and he went in through the delayed entry program. The benefit of that was that when he actually got to basic training almost a year later, he was already an E3 because they were giving you a 2-grade bump at that point. And his MEP scores were, whatever those scores are that they take, ESADs or whatever they take, the scores were high. He was a 3.6 GPA at school. He was what they were looking for, right? And he helped them recruit other kids from school. He really believed in his country and wanted to serve his country. And I was extremely proud of that. And I supported that decision because we did everything together, he and I. And he could have waited 3 months and done it without me because he'd be 18. In December 28th, he turns 18. That's only 3 months away. But these are the things that I hold on to dearly. The relationship, the confidence that we had that relationship, because he wanted me to approve of his decision and make that decision with him. And we did it together 3 months prior to him to being able to do it on his own. So at that point, he did some training with his recruiter, and he got through his high school year, and he graduated. And then in November or December of 04, I think it was, maybe 03, went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and his career in the Army started. His early life prior to that, again, was he was always looking out for the underdog. He always would stand up and protect those that he felt couldn't do it on their own. Not in a forceful way, but kind of led from behind. Being protective of those that may not have had the same opportunities. He was a pretty intelligent kid, as you could tell by his grades, and he got his way when he wanted. I don't know where he got those manipulative skills, but he got some skills to be able to manipulate things the way he wanted, maybe from me, and so when he got in the military, that attitude prevailed. He went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where all MPs go. They do the AIT and their basic training together as MPs. They don't have separate. So he was done with the whole thing in about, I don't remember how many weeks, 16 weeks. And I went back to Missouri for his graduation from basic. He was the top of his class in basic. So they said, hey, we got a spot to jump out of airplanes. You can get your wings. You want to go up to Fort Benning and so and they said you get an extra, like, I don't know, $235 a month because you have your wings. And he goes, heck yeah. So before he deployed to his first duty station, He went up to Benning and spent 30 days jumping out of airplanes from about 1,500 feet. When he got home here on his way to Korea, which was his first station, he walked like he'd been riding a horse for a month. His knees were shot. I mean, because they jump, it's low altitude, right? I mean, they want to be on the ground as soon as possible so they don't get shot. And but that's the kind of thing. He always made the most of the opportunities that were presented to him. So he came home. So Joey, being Joey, practical joker, knows how to yank his dad's chain. He'd been working on it for 9 years, just he and I. So he knew just how to push my buttons. And he's getting ready to go to Korea for a year. Now I'm in major separation anxiety here. He's been at Leonard Wood. I've seen him. Spent a few days with him. Then he went to Benning, but he's going to Korea for a year. And I'm like, well, I got to see you before you go. He goes, Dad, they're not telling me when I'm leaving. I don't know. I'm probably going to go through Seattle. I go, great. I'll fly to Seattle. I'll be inside of TSA and I'll spend time with you in the lounge for 45. I don't care. I just got to, God, I don't know if I can make that work, Dad. I'm in the military, And he was paying me back for a little something happened in basic training. I kind of got him in trouble by calling this. You don't do that. I found out as a parent. But nonetheless, I can't do this. And so I'm frantic. And it's hard to communicate with him when he's at Benning because he's in jump school. And cell phones and stuff weren't what they are today. And I learned not to call the command and ask to speak to my son. That's no, don't do that. Don't put him through that humiliation. And so I called his girlfriend, he'd been dating since the 8th grade. So they'd been dating for about 4 years. We knew in the cards that they were going to get married, and we had talked about that, and that's fine. And I called up Corey, and I said, Corey, I can't get a hold of Joey. Can you help me get a hold of Joey? She said, I haven't heard from him either. And I'm like, that's a little strange, right? So I called his mom. I don't know. I don't have any idea what's going on. I haven't heard from him. He was living with you. I'm freaking out. I got to see my son before he goes to Korea. I am like restless and discontented, right? Because I'm not getting a chance to see my son. I don't know why I'm telling you this story, but it is pretty funny. Because he is who he is. This tells who Joey was. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, my neighbors are having a party. And I'm not very happy anyway. And cars are parked all over the place. And they've kind of been like that before. And we've had these discussions. And I'm not happy. And it's 1 o'clock in the morning or 12:30. And there's a pound on my door. And I'm like, oh, it's some idiot from the party going to the wrong house. Right? That's what you would think, right? I open the door and there's my son standing there. I'm telling you, I cried. I jumped in his arms. He was like trying to hold on to a steel girder. Man, that kid had gotten in shape. He had come back from basic and he'd done all his PT and he didn't tell me, but he had saved up a month of block leave and he actually spent a month with me between when he left Fort Benning and got to Korea. And he kept that from me the whole time. And he had his mom in on it. He had his girlfriend in on it because he wanted to get over on his dad. And I want to tell you, it was the best joke I ever had played on me. And so we spent a month together. He and Corey spent some time together, his soon-to-be wife, and he met a gal named Leanne, who was my neighbor 3 doors down, who I just started dating. Now, for the 9 years that I raised Joey, I didn't date anybody. So he was a little surprised. And he got to meet Leanne, and then he took off. Oh, I take that back. I apologize. He hadn't met her yet. Wasn't dating her yet. He went to Korea. While he was in Korea, I started dating my neighbor 3 doors down. It's a good name. And when he came back from Korea, he spent another month. He didn't take block leave when he was there. His girlfriend went and visited him over there for 2 weeks, but he never took block leave so he could come back and spend another month with me. He built up his time. And that's when he met what would end up being my wife for the first time. And he spent another month here, and then he and I made the long trip from here in Discovery Bay to Fort Hood, Texas, because that's where his duty station was going to be. That's where he was going to prepare to go to war. And we knew this. He went down there, and he trained, and he trained, and he trained. And when I call him and talk to him, I go, how you doing, Joey? He goes, I just want to go do my job. I'm tired of training. I know what to do. I want to get over there. I want to get it done. Let's go do it. That he was pretty gung-ho. And so a year passed, and In the meantime, in July, I proposed to Leanne, and it wasn't my first rodeo. I kind of alluded to that, but it was her first marriage. And she now had to put her first marriage together like in 90 days, which is pretty hard to do. Find a venue, all that kind of stuff. But we knew at the time, we didn't know why it was so important, but we knew that we had to have Joey be a part of our wedding. Now we know why that was so important. So as I mentioned before, I am a person of faith, and I think God has a hand in everything we do. And I do sincerely believe that God put Leanne in my life because he knows everything. I don't want to prophesize too much, but it's a big part of my life. And he knew Joy was going home. He also knows I'm a recovering alcoholic. He also knows he probably shouldn't leave me alone. And so he put this wonderful woman in my life. And the last thing that Joey did before he deployed in October 8th, almost there, October 8th, was he came home to be the best man at our wedding. Took another 2 weeks off. They let him come home. He got, in the meantime, his girlfriend, fiance, had moved to Texas. In fact, at that point, they were already married. I just didn't know it. But nonetheless, they did get married before he deployed, which is awesome. They'd been together for like 6 years. And so he came home and was the best man for our wedding. That was the last time that my parents or my friends, anybody saw Joey except for me, because I went back there the day he deployed. So that was the last time that any of his family and our friends and his grandparents, he was an only grandchild as well as an only child. My parents didn't have any other grandchildren, would have an opportunity to see Joey. And he did a great job. He obviously did a great job because October 8th, we're going to be celebrating 20 years married together.
Wow.
That is a miracle for me. And she is an angel, because I'm not an easy person to live with. Joey didn't help that to a certain extent, but he also taught me a lot. Interestingly enough, Joey only met Leanne twice. He met her when he came back from Korea, and then he met her when we got married. Only 2 times that they had a relationship other than on the phone, which apparently they had more than I was aware of, because Joey used to call up Leanne. Now, remember, I was trying to stay out of relationships through his whole raising. So he kind of saw how I was with women. I kind of put these walls up around me, right? Because I just didn't want any relationships. I wanted to raise my son, which, by the way, sometimes makes you more attractive. But nonetheless, he saw that, and he would call her up. And I found, of course, you find out the most interesting things after they're gone. I'm sure you found out some very interesting things about your brother.
Yep.
He would call her up and say, "Hey, is my dad treating you okay?" And she would say, "Yeah, Joey, he's treating me fine." Because if he's not, I'll call him. I'll talk to him. I mean, he's even, playing the protector. You know what I mean? He's just, that's the kind of kid he was. And I'm not a mean person. I was treating her fine, but he wanted to be sure. He sensed that our relationship was the one. And he'd seen me through a few other relationships, and he felt that this was it. He had told his future wife, when he was out home from Korea, when he first met Leanne, he told her one day in the car, she told me this later, he told her that, that's the guy my dad's going to spend, that's the guy my dad's going to spend the rest of his life with. He sensed that at that point, because that's how connected we were, Anyway, so he comes home, he goes to Fort Leonard, he trains up, and the day that he deployed, is this about stories? I got stories. Can I tell another story?
Dude, I'm here for it.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Always parenting, always being the father, even though he's now 18, 19 years old. I play golf. I'm chairman of a golf club and, a membership club. And I had put on a tournament that morning that he was going to deploy on Sunday. This was Saturday morning. I call him on the way to the golf course and say, "Hey, listen, Joe, I'm going to play golf. I'll be off the air for about 4 or 5 hours, but I'll call you when I get back off the course so we can talk." Because they're going to leave the next day, and he's going to go to Iraq. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, well, we're just kind of cleaning out the barracks because there's another unit coming in and some of the families are showing up. And I go, whoa, what? Some of the families are showing up. We could be there. He goes, yeah, well, there's mostly the local people. Nobody's really flying in. I didn't think. I said, Joey, what the heck, right? I go play golf and I come back. And he's thinking about it while I'm playing golf. And I'm thinking about it while I'm playing golf. And he says to me, hey, Dad, can you come out and see me before I go? Okay, well, let's think about this for a minute. I live out in it's almost Central Valley of California. For me to get to the Oakland airport, it's about an hour, 15-minute drive. Then I got to fly to Houston. Then I got to drive to Killeen, which is a 2.5-hour drive. And it's 2 o'clock. It's 24 hours from when he's leaving to get on the plane. They're leaving at 3 o'clock. I'm like, no, you should have thought about this 2 weeks ago when I could have gotten a decent flight, and I'm not coming. You should have, what are you doing? What are you thinking? And in the meantime, I'm on the computer on Expedia, even though I can't use it. I'm looking for all the flights that are available, right? No, the answer is no. And I'm on the computer checking it. And then his wife, at that point, I didn't realize they had been married yet, but his wife calls me up and says, hey, Kevin, Joy really wants you to come out here. And I said, Corey, you guys should have thought about that a month ago. You knew the families were coming, and I'm not coming. Well, but he really wants you to come. So then he calls Leanne. Hey, can you talk to my dad? She goes, no, this is between you and your dad. In the meantime, I've already made all the plane reservations.
Yeah.
Didn't tell him. I'm still telling him no. We're on the road. Leanne's driving me to the airport. Her phone rings. This goes back to our relationship. Her phone rings and he goes, is he coming? And she looks at me and I hope this is okay. It's not typical language I use, but she looked at me and she mouthed, you asshole. Yeah. I hadn't told him I was coming and we're almost at the airport, right? And she goes, yeah, we're on 580. We're almost to the airport. He goes, oh, great. Let me talk to him. He knew I was coming. He knew I would do whatever it took to be there. He gave me the instructions. I wrote them on a Post-it note that I still have, and it's about 5 turns once you get off the ring at Houston to get to Killeen through all that rural 2-lane road. But here's the funny part. I said, great. My flight arrives in Houston at 3:15 in the morning. So I had to lay over in Las Vegas. And I said, have Corey pick me up. Oh, Dad, Corey's already here. Now, mind you, he's driving my truck that I gave him. He's got my vehicle, and he's asking me to come see him. And now he's telling me that his fiance, who I think is fiance, won't drive to Houston to pick me up. Well, she's already here, Dad. That'd be like 3 hours of driving for her. You can't just rent a car. So I do. Rent a car, drive out there. I get to the outside gates of Killeen about 8 o'clock in the morning and have a great picture of he and I half asleep like this in an IHOP talking to each other. And I spent the whole day with him. I met his unit. I met his platoon. I met his platoon sergeant. And those relationships have given me surrogate grandchildren all across the United States. I have 5 grandchildren that call me Papa Kevin that have none of my DNA. They're the kids of soldiers that served with my son that I met that day, the day he deployed. And then I stayed in contact with after they came back. And we've been to 5-year-old birthday parties. We've been to, it's awesome. They're my surrogate grandchildren because Joey they didn't have any kids. And so that was the day he deployed. In the meantime, I'd get a lot of phone calls from him. He's an MP. He kind of finds his way to get things done. And so I get more phone calls than letters from him. And he would tell me everything's fine. He would tell me, oh, we're in one of the safest areas in Iraq. And actually, technically, where he was most of the time was because he was at a base up near Anaconda where they were, which is near the international airfield up there where they were protecting insurgents that were giving us intel. And so it was like a big security base. He wasn't part of the interrogations, you might say, or the questioning or the information gathering. He was just the security, perimeter security. His unit, MP companies get sent, okay, you're going to protect this area. This is what you do. Boom, boom. But one of the jobs that they had was they would take these friends of the United States, you might say. They were actually on the terrorist watch list for the United States, but they still were our friends at the time. You know, your friend and my friend, we're good friends now thing.
Yep.
And they would take them on escort missions down to the Green Zone, which was about 35, 40 clicks south into Baghdad. And there was a strategic mission there, which the enlisted guys didn't know. They only know the tactical mission. But from their opinion, it was something that had been done too often on the same route too many times and being redundant. There was an ambush set for his unit that day. And as they got onto Route 1 just outside of Sadr City, they were attacked by what is described in the incident report as a well-orchestrated ambush. There was a suicide bomber involved that stopped the convoy. Then the convoy, took fire. And there was one casualty that day, and that was Joey. The vehicle he was driving was the one that had all the jamming gear in it. It was called the Warlock. It was very obvious because it didn't have a turret because it was full of jamming gear and it would jam all the IEDs. And that's when they go after first, so they can unjam all the signals. And he was hit directly with an EFP, went through the back of the Humvee. And this is before the up-armored Humvees and the MRAPs. 2006, we were barely getting IBAs over there for him. Bush was still president. There was a big conflict in Congress, and our guys weren't getting taken care of the way they should have been, in my opinion. So anyway, I found out later from the guys that were there on the road with him exactly what happened, very descriptively, and I know exactly his condition. I know exactly what happened. There was guys that fought back that day that got Bronze Stars with Valor for their efforts and the things that they did that day. Joey, of course, got a Bronze Stars with Valor for his sacrifice, as well as the Purple Heart, obviously. And that was it.
Can you take me back to how you found out the news?
Yeah. On 25 July of 2006, I believe it was a Tuesday evening, I'm upstairs. We live the motto for our town is live where you play in Discovery Bay. It's a boating community. The official garb is pretty much a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops. Sometimes not a shirt. This particular night, it was not a shirt. It was a warm July evening. I'm upstairs in the loft. You can kind of see it up above me there. And I'm on the computer, and my wife's making dinner. There's a knock on the door. Boom, boom, boom. I yell downstairs because I'm upstairs. I yell downstairs. And the way you could see like the entryway to my right and the kitchen to my left. So it's kind of like a galley kitchen. So she can't really hear the door being knocked as easy as I can upstairs. I said, "Hey, honey, there's someone at the front door." And there's another knock. I said, "Leanne, there's somebody at the front door." And probably a little irritated because that's part of who I am. And she goes around the front door, opens the door. This is all I hear from upstairs. Opens the door and slams the door. So I figure we don't get a lot of guests, especially uninvited. And so I thought, we missed them. They knocked twice. We weren't there, so they left because she slammed the door. Or, it's the Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't know who knows. But I just went on doing what I'm doing. And she walks over here to underneath the bottom of the stairs here, and she yells upstairs, "Kevin." And I'm like, "What?" She's maybe a little irritated. "Kevin." "Yeah, what's up?" There are 2 uniformed officers at the front door. She had to tell me that. You know what that means. I mean, you collectively, we all know what that means. That does not mean that he lost a leg, and that doesn't mean that he's got TBI. That doesn't mean that he's in a hospital in Germany, because they call you under those circumstances. If they're knocking on your front door, it's too late. It's done. And it was done. And I went, well, let's let them in. Now, I'm in shorts, no shirt, no flip-flops probably at this point. Came down the stairs. I am in 100% survival mode. I'm a survivor. I've been through a lot in my life. I shared a little bit about it with you, but life hasn't been always easy for me. I've done some pretty crazy things. Anyway, but I'm a survivor, and I'm in survival mode. That's the only way I can describe it. And I walk to the front door, and I throw open the front door, and I said, well, come on in. I mean, pretty much, I think, kind of like that. And they both take 2 steps off the porch. A chaplain and an officer. First casualty assistance notification for the officer. Chaplain had done it a couple times because we're short chaplains. They're all deployed. This is a tough time, man. This is 2006. We're in the meat of it over there. And they both take are you Joseph Graves? Because my first name's Joseph, as is my son's. I go by Kevin. And I said, come on in. And they said, sir, the lieutenant said, sir, National Guard guy, helicopter pilot out of 20 miles away from my house. First time. Doesn't know what to do. Good friend to this day. Says, are you Joseph Graves? I said, yes, I am. You know I am. I know why you're here. You know why you're here. Will you come in my house? This is what I recall. I don't recall a lot of what had happened after this evening, but I recall this evening. And we walk over. You could see the bay, the beautiful water up behind my house. And I walk over and I look out the window. And he says, I think you ought to have a seat. I said, no, I think you ought to have a seat. I said, here, chaplain, sit in my chair. Now, I've got an edge in my voice, and you can hear, I hopefully hear a little bit of it right now. I had an edge in my voice because I was not happy at this point. I was in survival mode. I was doing everything I could just to not strangle somebody. You know what I mean? I mean, I said, he said, sir, we're here to notify you that, are you the father of, they go through the whole routine of identification, and then we're here to inform you that your son was killed in action this evening, outside of Baghdad. Or no, he didn't say that. He said in Iraq. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, we don't know what happened. I said, well, come on, tell me something. Sir, we have no idea what happened. And you know what? I know now from my close relationship with other casualty assistance officers and actually working on improving that program for the military as a consultant, as an advisor, they don't know. They're given an assignment and they go in. In those days, man, they were picking anybody. Now, of course, they have assigned casualty assistance officers that have been trained. They're much better at it. This was early. They were not very good. They were not very good at it. Well, I was a guinea pig. Those of us in the early years were guinea pigs, and so, but they did the best they could. I'm not complaining, man. They did the best they could. So we chatted for about 15 minutes or so, and they couldn't tell me anything. And so I immediately called my best friend, who's like my brother, because I didn't want my parents. So this was in the days when, if you watched Fox News, the names of the soldiers would scroll across. I did not want my parents to find out about my son's death. My parents were big Fox News people. By seeing that scroll, and even CNN was doing the same thing. It didn't matter what you were watching. It was, the fact is it was happening. Yep. And they wait 24 hours, but they wait till everybody's notified that's involved before they release the information. So his wife had been informed, and she had moved to Houston, was living with her sister in Houston while Joy was in Killeen. Me and his mother. They hadn't been able to get a hold of his mother yet, so that helped me a lot, because and then they wait 24 hours after the last notification before they release the name to the media. And so I called Corey, his wife, and she's 20 years old. He's 21. She doesn't know what to do. She's like, we're both a mess. And I'm just like, Corey, we'll get through this. You know, it was rough. And, but my main concern was telling my parents. It was their only grandchild. They lived in a gated community up in Northern California, up near Auburn, called Lake Wildwood, a beautiful place up there. And, but you couldn't get in there unless your name was on the guest list, even though I have the same name. So I called a neighbor of my parents. The next morning at 8:00, we jump in the car. Leanne, my wife, myself, and my best friend, who was like a son to my parents, jump in his car. He drives me up there. And about 10, we got the neighbor to put our name at the gate. We go in, and these seem like trivial points, but they're not trivial when this is the occasion. In other words, Gordon, the gentleman that I called to put my name at the gate, will always have a bond with me that's different than other people's bonds, because he's the first person I told that was family. And we grew up with that family. They were family friends. They moved up there because my parents were there. They seem trivial, and I hope I can explain this to whoever happens to be watching this, but these are not trivial points. These are extremely important, minor, but important things that occur as you're trying to put one foot in front of the other, because that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to walk. You're just trying to breathe, because it's not coming. It's not happening on its own. You have to think about it. And so we knock on my parents' door. Oh, hey, Kevin, Jimmy, Leanne, what are you guys doing here? Well, we kind of want to talk to you. Where's Dad? He's downstairs in his workshop. So she goes to the door, opens the door. She goes, Gene, Kevin and Leanne are here. And I hear my dad from downstairs go, this cannot be good news. First thing out of his mouth, this cannot be good news. We're there uninvited. They live 2 hours from me. He nailed it on the head. And so that was one of the most important things that I did, was to be able to let them know personally, share that with them, have our time together. And then it was time to make decisions that I never thought about ever making. Where do you want your son buried? Do you want him cremated? Do you want an open casket? I don't know. I hadn't thought about this. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that drives down. I ride a Harley too, so I'm the kind of guy that drives down the street, and I'm always looking 3 blocks ahead. I don't get in accidents because I'm pretty observant of my surroundings. I'm looking ahead, preparing for things. That's just kind of my nature. Probably goes along with some of the things that you and I talked about offline. But so in my mind, I had always considered the possibility that Joey wouldn't come home. I wasn't prepared at all for it, but it was there. So I went into the survival mode, and then I got a call from his commander of the 720th MP Battalion back in Fort Hood, Texas. That the 110th was attached to at the battalion level. He was a company level. He said, Mr. Graves, this is Lieutenant Colonel Rangel, I believe. I think was his name. I think my wife's upstairs, so she's not answering. And he says, is there anything I can do for you? And because this was the day after, I am raw. I'm ripped apart. And I said something very stupid. And I said, can you bring my son back? Which was a very unfair and cruel thing to say in retrospect, but he got it. He understood I was just upset. And he said, no. And I said, sorry about that. And he and I had a relationship since then also. We don't talk much anymore because he's PCS and he's out of the military now, but we play golf together 3 years later. So I said, here's the one thing you can do. I think I mentioned my grandfather was in both World War I and World War II and was buried at Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Bruno over on the peninsula near San Francisco. I didn't know any place else. That's where I went to his funeral, and that's where I went to my grandmother's funeral. They're buried together over there, and it's the only military cemetery I could think of. And it made sense. It's the biggest in the area. It's got 120,000 military personnel. But it's a closed cemetery. It's out of land. It's landlocked. It was on the outskirts of town when it started, but now it's landlocked. I said, "You can get my son buried at Golden Gate National Cemetery." He goes, "Done." "Thank you, sir." He says, and he made that happen. Now it's not as difficult as you think it might be, even though it's closed. They do hold back some for active military and for personnel that are of high enough rank, but I didn't know that at the time. So we made those arrangements. I was going to Corey wouldn't come home because she didn't want to be here till Joey got here. And in those days, it took a while. First of all, the types of injuries that Joey incurred made identification very difficult. They had to do it through DNA. There was not able to make any physical identification that could be positive. So without going into too much detail, he had to, they all come back into Dover. And in those days, the parents didn't go to Dover. This is before the Fisher House was built. And so it took almost 2 weeks for Joey to get home. It's a long time. Today it happens in 4 or 5 days. But he came in as cargo in the belly of an airplane at San Francisco International Airport, was transported with a Patriot Guard escort at 1 o'clock in the morning. 2 guys on a motorcycle that had been driving all day long escorted my son home. And this is the early days of the Patriot Guard riders, the PGR. Something you may or may not be familiar with who they are, but they had a purpose in those days, and they had just been established less than a year prior to this. So he was escorted home. Of course, the highway patrol all the way home. Fire department picked him up when he got close to town, and we were standing in the street. I don't know, probably 11. It was probably about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night with my best friend Jim again and his family, and we were there when Joey arrived and was put into the funeral home, where his escort. He had an escort that travels with him. Anybody that's seen Taking Chance understands that. I've never seen the movie myself because I don't know if I want to, but he had an escort that flew from Fort Hood, Texas. Julio Martinez, friends of mine to this day, flew to Dover, and he escorted Joey home. They weren't doing things really well. I've mentioned this earlier in our conversation, and I was not assigned a casualty assistance officer, and I should have been because I was second next to kin. Corey had one, his wife, that was explaining how things operate back in Texas, but she wasn't coming home till he got here. So I was struggling to communicate, and I was talking to his unit back in Fort Hood, trying to figure out how we were going to move forward, how we're putting the memorials through, who's going to be, what do I need to do? Now, I'm an elder and a deacon at my church, Presbyterian Church right around the corner here. I happen to be the buildings and grounds elder. At the time, I moved around to different jobs, which meant that I'm responsible for opening the church up for events when they occur and this and that. I got to know what's happening. What role is the military going to play? What role is my pastor going to play? What role, And I don't have a casualty assistance officer because the military screwed up. I didn't know it at the time, and I don't know if they necessarily screwed up or their policies just weren't in place yet, but they're really good at what they do. And they're really good at making good of what they need to do. And Lieutenant Colonel Rangel saw the issue, and he sent one of the sergeants out that is the rear detachment sergeant of the 110th Company to be my impromptu casualty assistance officer. So Sergeant Hemstreet, who a friend of mine I play golf with to this day, lives in Arizona now, he showed up. And he walked me through it. And between he and Julio, who was Joey's accomplice, or Joey's, what do they call him, his travel partner, right? The guy that stayed with Joey from the day he arrived at Dover. we put together the program, we put together everything together, and those guys were awesome with the support of his unit. Tremendous support of his unit. I want to be clear about that. They did the best they could with what they knew to do at the time. It was their first loss. And so we put together the service. We had a great service here at the church. It was 1,000 people, and we're a community of 13,000. Our town's only 13,000 big. The schools let out. They'd line the streets with kids and signs saying, "We miss you, Joey." And the Patriot Guard riders showed up. Interesting story. If you're listening to this and you don't know who the Patriot Guard riders are, just Google them and get a little bit of history on who they are. But I get up and I get dressed the morning of the memorial service, and my wife goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I got to go open the church up. There's going to be a funeral there today. It's my job, right?" So she goes, "But it's your son's funeral. You don't have to do this." I go, No, I got to do this. Because you're doing things by rote at this point. You're just, something familiar just helps you breathe and helps you walk. I mean, I'm not kidding. You've been through loss. A lot of people that are going to watch this have been through some loss. But unless you've been through this, it's not explainable. It really isn't. It's everything you can do to remember how to put your pants on. It really, I mean, it is. I just can't explain it any differently. I go down. It's 8:30. It's the 8 o'clock or 8:15, and it's 10 o'clock, I think, or 10:30 is the memorial service. But most everything's still at the funeral home, because that's where Joey is. And the Patriot Guard riders have been invited to show up to this thing at the behest of my father, who's not a biker dude, but knows that I'm not either. I wasn't either. In fact, I just bought a Harley in 2003, my first Harley. Anyway, so I go down to the church, and they'd say, "Hey, can you reserve some parking for us?" Because there's probably going to be about 20 bikes or so. And I'm like, wow, oh, okay. Well, it's a small church, small parking lot, but I reserved some space, and I get down there, and here's this guy with I forgive him to this day, but he had a Honda Goldwing. It wasn't a Harley. And he's wiping it down. And I said, "Wow, you're a little early." He says, "Yeah, well," he said, "the call went out, and we haven't been doing this for very long, and I wanted to be a part of this, and I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get here." I can't believe this. I said, "Well, where'd you come from?" He said, "Corvallis, Oregon." He'd left Oregon the night before to drive all the way down to be a part of this, to honor my son, really having their job was not to interact with the family. They were strictly there to provide a flag line. Yeah. And this guy had left Oregon the day before to come down to honor my son. And I said, "Well, I think they're meeting down at the funeral home." And he says, "Yeah, I know, but I just wanted to see where I was going to end up." So I just couldn't. It was overwhelming. It was unbelievable. These Patriot Guard riders, what they do and what they sacrifice, even to this day, for every one of our military personnel that are serving. And so I joined the PGR. I was the first Gold Star dad to do it because it was brand new at the time, and rode with them for a while, but then my roles kind of changed. But nonetheless, what I'm telling you is 35 bikes showed up. And when we left the church and the memorial service was a great mix of secular and religious. Colonel Rangel was there. The Command Sergeant Major was there. We were all presented with models. My couple of my ex-wives were there. And my wife and friends that I hadn't seen in years, and people showed up to pay their respects to Joey, and Corey spoke and I spoke, and I don't remember much. About that, believe it or not, but I do remember getting in the limo, following the hearse out of town and all the kids. And then when we went past his middle school, because he was involved, I told you he loved to be in PAC, he loved to be in performing arts. The drama teacher got all the kids, and they had lined the whole, because you drive right by the middle schools 3 miles from here. They were all lined up on the fence with signs. "We love you, Joey. I mean, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, the outpouring. Today, there's a gymnasium there. They built a new gymnasium there, huge high school caliber gymnasium, because eventually they think it may be a high school campus. Later on, about 10 years later, and it's on the front of the gymnasium, it says the Joey Graves Veterans Memorial Gymnasium. They dedicated and named the gym after Joey. That was his middle school. And there's a plaque inside that I got to write and have made that has a picture of him on it. And, when I'm gone and we move someplace else, if we do, or I'm just gone, my son's legacy will continue because it's about him.
Yep.
I'm doing the talking, but it's about him. Anyway, so we get over to the cemetery. I don't know how long you want this thing. I got stories I could tell forever.
I'm good, man.
But I love sharing, and I haven't shared a lot of this for a long time, so I do want to thank you for the opportunity to do that. But we had Patriot Guard and police escort. We literally drove from here to San Bruno, California in about 40 minutes, which is about a 60-minute drive, because the cops had us going 90 miles. They closed the freeways down. They closed the off-ramps down. Got to Foster City. They closed it. My friend of mine's brother's a Foster City cop. He had those off-ramps closed down, so nobody could get on the freeway. And Patriot Guard riders friends were calling, going, "Hey, who'd you guys bury? Was it a general or what, man? You guys," we had a procession you could not believe that could have been for a 2-star general, but it was for an E4 specialist, because the rank didn't matter at that point. It was a sacrifice that mattered. Another interesting story. So things that I hold on to I smile, I laugh, and I cry over this, right? But there are some funny things that happen along the way. And it's been 20 years. I cry a little bit less, and I smile a little bit more. We come around the corner to the cemetery, and I know the cemetery pretty well. My grandparents are buried there. And I look out there, and there's a backhoe on the thing, and I look at my wife, and I kiddingly say, "I hope they're not digging Joey's grave." Well, guess what? They had forgot to dig the grave. The National Cemetery was going through a transition. That particular director had been fired for exactly this type of thing. And there was an interim in there, and paperwork. And so we come through the gate, and they stop us, and they go, "Mr. Graves, you're going to have to stall for about 35 minutes. They're literally digging the grave with the backhoe. And I said, "You're kidding me." And they said, "No." But you know what? I'm an organizer. I'm a leader. I can take control of things. Give me something to do. In fact, if you give me something to do, it's probably better than having me sit there doing nothing. So we stop on the main drag of the cemetery, of the cemetery of Golden Gate. Now, it's a huge cemetery. Like I said, 120,000. General Nimitz is buried there. There's a famous people buried there. And a very famous person named Specialist Joseph A. Graves is buried there, down in Section G. And I stop the limo, and I get out. Of course, now everybody thinks this is where we're supposed to be. So all, there's 35 cars or whatever, they all start, no, everybody just stay in your cars. We're just going to hang out here for a few minutes. Everything's going to be fine. I'm running the show. But it gave me something to do. The Patriot Guards were tremendous help. They went along and, they rode their bikes along and explained to people, well, it's just going to be a couple minutes. We're doing some last-minute preparations. Well, they had to set up the whole contraption that lowers the casket in and all that stuff. And so, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes pass, and we go down and go through the ceremony and the flag and the folded flag. The headstone wasn't placed. I don't know if it typically is placed by then or not, but it was on the back of a John Deere tractor, so I could at least see what the headstone said. It was engraved, and it was all done, and it was there ready to go. It just wasn't in place yet. And the casket's on that contraption that they lower them with, and they said, "Do you want us to lower the body in?" Again, not a question that I thought I would have to answer. I don't know what's the right answer. Yeah, I guess. Well, I don't think that they really wanted to because they'd set this thing up pretty hastily, and while the casket's going down, this thing's kinda jiggling around. Now, maybe it always jiggles around, but I thought, "Oh, maybe that was the wrong decision because I hope this casket doesn't fall into the grave," and I'm telling you, the these are things that make it mine. This is my experience. The little things, the memories I hold on to, the quirks, the PGR guy that had his little wiener dog with him. I mean, all these things. And then Sergeant Hemstreet, who was my stand-in casualty assistance officer, handed me my folded flag. And sometimes, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but sometimes I think of those T-shirts that people wear that say, "Hey, I went to the Grand Canyon, and all I got was this stupid T-shirt," right? Well, my son gave his life for his country, and all I got was a folded flag at the time. It was a wonderful ceremony. It was attended by friends and family from all over the country. 2 of the soldiers that served with my son were there. One of them got to be a pallbearer. It was a very I would not have it done any other way. S the cars, the whole bit, I would have not have done it. The Patriot cars, I would not have had it done any other way. It was very I hold on to that memory dearly, and I just never will forget Sergeant Hemstreet standing there in his dress boots handing me that flag. And Corey got a flag, and my wife got a flag. My ex-wife got a flag, and that part was then over with. But you still gotta learn to breathe, and you still gotta learn to walk, and you still have to convince yourself that you still wanna be alive. That's a very, very real thing. My father was the minister of music at a Presbyterian church. That's where my faith comes from. For 35 years, I was literally raised in the choir loft of a Presbyterian church. So the roots of my faith run very deep. If I didn't have those roots, and if I didn't believe that God had a better plan than I do, I wouldn't be here right now. I really wouldn't. I'd be another statistic, and I'll let it go with that. But you know what I'm talking about. I just don't want to. To this day, I don't want to be here. I want to be with Joey. Now, I say that, and I say it in front of my wife, and she knows what I mean by that. Doesn't mean that I don't love everybody and I don't cherish every moment that I have on earth, but I really don't want to be here anymore. I really want to be with Joey. I believe in life after death, and right now I have life after death, and I need to make the most of that. So, um, I went back to work. I was in the construction industry. Of course, in 2006, the construction industry, our economy was tanking. I don't know if you remember 2006, 7, 8, but all of a sudden we went from building 100 houses a week to 2, and I was in the residential construction business. And my boss was awesome and kept me on probably almost a year longer than he should have because there was no work and I was still getting paid. And then he laid me off. So I got laid off in like 2007. And I thought, well, maybe God's trying to tell me I need to take a break. And there's this whole grieving thing that everybody kept talking to me about. I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. I'm good. I'm good. How much time do you say that, right? I'm good. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm good. But my boss said, hey, listen, you played a lot of golf. You should do a golf tournament in honor of your son. We have a tremendous amount of people that we could bring in from the construction industry that would support you. You've been in their corporate offices every Monday for the last 10 years. They all know you. Let's do a golf tournament. So we started a golf tournament the next September. And in fact, we just had our 19th annual Joy Graves Memorial Golf Tournament. We're still doing it 19 years later. And the money that was raised from that golf tournament some gave all the Joy Graves Foundation. I have a nonprofit that I started 19 years ago. We're going on 20, where I work with local, regional, military survivors, where we provide venues for families to come together. We provide events for people to go to. And it's and in fact, I was one of the 2 dads that put together the Gold Star license plate for California. Went through all the legislative process to make that happen, which wasn't easy. And, from that, I made some contacts at the California Department of Veterans Affairs, and I went to work as an outreach specialist for the California Department of Veterans Affairs. I completely walked away from my construction at that point, and I went to work for about a third of what I was making in the private sector, but I love my job, and I did it for 14 years. I just retired last November. And, I got to work for veterans, and also for Gold Star families. It was a nice meld of my abilities, talents, and combining my passions. And we do a lot, for veterans, as well as we do a lot for Gold Star families here through that foundation, but it's really Joey doing it. Nobody gives a dime to me. They give because of Joey and the motto for our foundation is inspired by one to honor all. The inspiration for what I do is my son. But I believe that God has given me a little bit of a gift of communication, and I think that as difficult as it is to put yourself out there and feel the pain and the two-edged sword of talking on Memorial Day or talking on Veterans Day or setting up a booth at a veterans event, it's a two-edged sword because it brings the pain every time. And actually, I embrace the pain. I wanna hurt. I want because it keeps him alive inside of me. But it's not for everybody. Everybody has their own path to grieving. Ah, yes, that old path to grieving I was talking about earlier, which, by the way, I've never gone to professional counseling for. I'm an idiot. I should, and someday I will, but it's been 20 years and I haven't done it yet. But one of the things that we recommend through our foundation, and one of the things that we try to do is to encourage people to get counseling through the vet centers or through private counseling, through your hospital, because there's feelings that will ruin lives if you do not learn how to deal with them. And I was very blessed in that I relied on God to be my counselor, and he didn't let me down. I let him down many times in my life. Let me tell you, I walked way away. I was a typical preacher's kid, walked way away. But he never let me down, and he hasn't yet, and we continue, our foundation continues to be successful, I believe, because we're doing the right thing. We talk about a healthy path to grieving, and I say that because if you believe, Kevin Graves speaking, the guy that never went to counseling, that if you don't find a healthy path to grieving, you will die, and you will either die spiritually or you will die physically, and I am a witness to that. I have witnessed, not personally witnessed, but I have people we have worked with have committed suicide, Gold Star parents that have couldn't find that healthy path to grieving. Some people never progress, some people walk away, divorces occur. A lot of things happen. They might have happened anyway, right? It might not have been a great marriage to begin with, but this didn't help. And a lot of that was because you don't find that healthy path to grieving. Leanne, my wife, was put in my life by God to save my life. Because if she had not been here, remember, earlier in this, I don't even remember how long ago we started talking, but I told you she only met him twice. And yet she is the horsepower behind the foundation. I'm just the guy with the microphone. I'm just the mouthpiece. She does all the heavy lifting. She does all the books. She does all the, I do the fundraising, but she does everything else that makes it happen. File the papers, do the taxes, all that stuff. She met my son twice, but she was still his mother. And she loved him as much as I did. And she's come to know him as well as I have, almost. Nobody will ever know him as well as I do, because I know all the secrets. But as a team, we've helped and changed people's lives, I believe, within the Gold Star community. I'm not, might sound a little arrogant. I don't mean to. I try to stay humble, but we're proud of what we're doing, and we're proud of this, what we do for others. We have scholarships. We have over close to $150,000 in scholarships for Gold Star kids. We've already paid out over half of those. We started 529N funds for survivor kids, on top of what they already get through SOS and the other programs in the government. Kid from is going to University of Texas. We started his program when he was 4 years old. We put $10,000 into a 529N fund that we raised on a Memorial Day. One day we raised it, put it into him, strictly for him. It's like $40,000, $50,000 now. And we're going to be turning that money over to him, and he can use it however he needs to further his education. Things that we felt were important, because really what's important is what you're doing. Say their names. We have to say their names. We can't let their memories die. And everybody that's going to have an opportunity to be a part of this program that you're presenting is going to have that opportunity to get their names to be said. And that really is what this is all about. One of the other things that we've been involved with, so many times we're providing counseling, help, care for other Gold Star families, but I learned to do that because of an event that I went to, kicking and screaming, because they might want me to talk about grieving, in February of 2007, which was about 8 months after my son was killed. Blue Star Moms of the East Bay, we all know who Blue Star Moms are. They put on an event. It was their first year they'd done it. It was their second event for Gold Star parents, because what they figured out early on is that none of the benefits, resources, and things from the DOD go to parents. They go over and down, but they don't go up. And that makes kind of sense because, you know, we don't expect our kids to take care of us. Well, you know, I get it, but it leaves a huge void in how do we, most of us with no prior service, how do we know how to deal with being thrown into this military world? And they started an event at the Marine Memorial Club in San Francisco. A guy named General Myatt and a gal named Nancy Topman, and can't think of the other gal's name. No. Deb Saunders started a program for Gold Star parents in San Francisco, where the whole weekend is paid for by fundraising and the Marine Memorial Club. And there's about 100 Gold Star families that show up from all over California. It's for California only, but show up there. And we get together, man. It's like vets helping vets. Well, Gold Star's helping Gold Stars. Nobody knows. We don't want anybody else to know how we feel. I don't want my best friend to know how I feel. I don't want him to know that, because that would mean he's gone through the same pain that I'm going through. So we all got together. And about a week before the event that I had agreed to go to, I got a call from a gal named Nancy Topman, who's still very active in this, and she said she wanted some phone number or address of somebody that she thought I knew. And I said, "Well, I'm glad you called, because I ain't going. I'm not going over there." She goes, "Oh, no, you have to." 45 minutes she spent on the phone convincing me that I needed to go to this program. I couldn't say no. I mean, she didn't leave me any option. So we got over there, and we started to meet some of the people, and oh my gosh, I got stories to tell. We started to meet some of the people and realized that we had a lot in common. Like, I could put my hand on another father's shoulder and say, you know, I don't know exactly how you feel, but I have a pretty good idea how you feel. And we could lean on each other. There's a ton of stories around this, but nobody will listen to this podcast if I talk too much. So I'm going to go to the most important one. And that is that particular event, the first event, they did assigned seating for the Friday night, the big Friday night dinner. You go there on Thursday morning, all day Thursday, you go through some like small group stuff, and they have memorial tables, and they have some of the public come in, they have some of the press come in. And then Friday, it's a memorial, it's just for the families. a wonderful memorial service put on by the Marine Memorial Club and the theater there. Absolutely phenomenal. Marine band comes and plays. It's just unbelievable. And then that night is the big dinner. And so they had assigned seating, and I'm sitting next to this guy, Marine dad. Somehow Marine dads think that their kids put their pants on different than Army guys do, but we know different. A guy named Mike Anderson. And I'm sitting there and I said, we got to do something for our kids. We got to do something. I don't know, license plate, something. And he about fell out of his chair. He goes, "You're kidding me." I go, "No, why?" He says, I've been working on a license plate bill for almost a year now that I can't get any traction on. I've been talking to politicians. He says, "You want to work with it on me? On it with me?" And I said, "Sure." So for the next year and a half, Mike Anderson and I worked on getting the bill passed that got Gold Star license plates. I used to have one sitting here, but we're going through remodeling, so can't show it to you, for the state of California. And it's got a folded flag on it, which they didn't want to do. I said, "No, that's all I got. That's all they gave me. That folded flag's going on the license." We fought with the Highway Patrol. We fought with the legislators. It wasn't easy. And it has a Gold Star on it, and it says Gold Star Families along the bottom of it. And I worked on that we worked on that for about a year and a half, but the sponsoring agency for that was the California Department of Veterans Affairs. They were the ones that were convincing, and this is the Arnold Schwarzenegger days, right? Arnold was 2000, almost 2010. Schwarzenegger was going out. Schwarzenegger promised he would sign the bill if we could get it through all the committees. You have to go through all kinds of committees, and then it's not easy. I won't go into the politics of it, but it's not easy, especially in California. Let me just put it that way. And so we got it passed. Arnold Schwarzenegger actually handed me my license plate himself. Mike Anderson got plate 001. I got plate 002, and along with a few others. And we were both handed those plates directly by Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. But the really cool part about that was, and then he went out of office, was that I had made connections at the California Department of Veterans Affairs with the secretary of the department, cabinet level position. And he's the one that got me the job, or he's the one that gave me the opportunity to get the job with the California Department of Veterans Affairs, where I got to work for the last 14 years, working with veterans, honoring our heroes, public speaking at different events, representing the department as well as representing our foundation. And it was life-changing for me. It was the impetus for the foundation, because once I got done with the license plate bill, I was in a void. What am I going to do with my life now? I'd been laid off. What am I going to do? And I started the foundation, so I had someplace to focus my attention. So after that event, meeting Mike Anderson, working on the license plate bill, and trying to fill this void, that was the impetus for Some Gave All to Joy Graves Foundation. Because I realized that as I went to memorial services for other Gold Star families and was able to walk up to the parents, because the parents don't get anything, and say, "Hey, I live close by if you ever want to talk." I didn't always get a positive response. One time it took 4 years to get a response from a guy that I had been working on for 4 years. And the first time when I tried, "Hey, how you doing?" he pushed me and went, "Who the hell are you?" Okay, maybe that was a little bit too much. But we became dear friends. His wife unfortunately he passed, but his wife and the family there, we do tons of stuff with her still. But from that came the foundation, and from that came a change in my career, and from that came a purpose. But all that came from the sacrifice of my son. I would be living a completely different. Listen, I was not a bad guy. I did some bad things when I was young, but I wasn't a bad guy. I was a good guy. I was an elder in the church. I was a deacon in the church. I helped other people. I raised money to help other people. We gave money away. I believe in taking care of those around you, and I did that, through my faith. But I'm a better man today because of the sacrifice of my son than I was then. And that's what keeps me putting one foot in front of the other. Breathing's easier. Walking's easier. I've done a ton of things to honor Joey through different organizations. I've climbed Mount Shasta. We've gone white water rafting. We've gone on a hot air balloon. I mean, we've done a ton of stuff with other survivors because of the sacrifice of my son, and we met the most wonderful people. People that are truly our dear friends today are people that we met through the commonality of the loss of our mostly of our children, because that's who I relate to the most. We have an interesting sibling program that we worked with, though, because what we found with siblings, and you may or may not be able to relate to this, was that when they were still there, it was like all the attention was like towards the loss from the parents, and sometimes they felt like they were cast aside. And they're
Yep.
jumping up and down and going, "Hey, we're still here. Why? Come on! I get that we all love Johnny, but we're still here. Show us some attention." It's a unique. You probably can relate to that. It's a unique problem with siblings,
Yep.
and so we identified that. And at that program we have in San Francisco, we have a sibling class now where they can talk about that. And we also provide some counseling for the parents, going, "Remember, I know it's tough. Believe me. I don't have that problem. He's my only child, but it's a real problem, as you can probably relate to." So we're really blessed to be able to do the things we do. I'm blessed to be able to have retired. I'm plenty old. I'm overqualified for retirement, so age isn't an issue. Well, it's an issue, but it's not an issue for retirement. And but I can focus a little bit more time on the foundation. It's been This year will be our 20th Joy Grace Memorial Golf Tournament. It's going to be a huge deal. We do it at the local country club here. Joy's first job was cart boy when he was 13 years old at the country club here. So we have the golf tournament there every year at the Discovery Bay Country Club. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to tell some stories. It's very helpful. It's therapeutic to a large extent. Being able to share things I hadn't thought about in a while. But we've gotten tremendous support through our friends, and that's what we have to encourage anybody that's going through any kind of loss. And the cause of death is not really relevant. It was for a while, but it's not anymore. Cause of death is not really relevant. What's relevant is the loss. And how do you
Absolutely.
deal with that loss? And how do you find that healthy path to grieving?
And that's what we're talking about. That's why we need to share these stories. We need to share each other's experiences, because not everybody can find themselves in a group. I know there's groups available for everybody, obviously, but there's a lot of people like you where you just didn't want to go and be part of it necessarily unless you had somebody coax you along to go be part of that. And that's what sharing these stories does. It gives an even ground for people to be able to listen in and say, "Hey, I share that experience. Maybe this would help me."
So what I would share with any parents or Gold Star families or whoever that happen to hear this is that, first of all, some have not taken that first step. We have people that come to this event in San Francisco whose kids have been gone for 15 years. It's the first time they've been anywhere. And that's fine. Everybody does it on their own time. Grieving is a very personal thing, but I need to convey a couple of things. First of all, you will grieve for the rest of your life, hopefully. That's the goal. Believe it or not, that's the goal. Grieve for the rest of your life. Keeps the memories alive. And secondly, think of people such as myself and Nick and other people that have been willing to share, because it's not easy. It takes some courage to do this. Look at it as if you're on a field of snow and it's 3 or 4 feet deep. And you've taken the first few steps and you just can't take another step because the snow's too deep. And then all of a sudden you look to your left and there's some footprints. And you can step over and walk in those footprints that are already in the snow. And it just makes your journey that much easier because somebody's broken the snow down before you. And that's how we look at our lives. Hopefully we're breaking the snow for those that are coming behind us. Like I said, for us, it's been 20 years. I was just at an event in Colorado where 8 of the 16 men had lost their kids in the last 8 months. Oh my gosh, it's so raw. But you're not alone. We're doing this together. And Nick's got some resources I'm sure he shares, and our resources are available. And we just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to honor their loved ones.
Kevin, thank you for trusting us with Joey's story and for showing what it looks like when love turns pain into purpose. Your strength is what every Gold Star parent carries quietly, that mix of heartbreak and hope that never stops giving. And now, as we always do, let's raise a glass. To Specialist Joseph A. Graves, the soldier who took the lessons of home, loyalty, laughter, and doing things the right way and brought them to every corner of the world he served in. To the brother in arms whose name still echoes on the course, on the gym wall, and in the hearts of everyone who knew him. And to his dad, Kevin, who proves that even the hardest stories can build something good. Here's to Joey. May his light stay steady, his legacy stay loud, and his story remind us all to live a little better in their memory. Say his name, Specialist Joseph A. Graves. A special thank you to our Gold Star Story supporters, Terry Mullins, Danielle Metal, Jackie Mullins, June Latindry, Bob and Pat Scott, Mary Jo Stoy, Jess Miller, Aaron Peck, Georgia Franco, Nate Latindry, and Edie Howard. If you believe in this mission to honor, record, and remember, visit goldstarStoriesUSA.com. Your tax-deductible donation through Veterans Collaborative helps us keep the mic on for families like Kevin's, so the world never forgets their sons and daughters. Until next time, look after your people.